Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the recently conducted UPSC Mains examination, and today we are going to discuss about General Studies 1 paper, and in that we are going to discuss the question that has been asked from the geography subject. Now in this year, if you look at the geography overall, total 7 number of questions have been asked. Questions are basically from the climatology as well as from the economic geography, where we have to discuss about the resources, and then the questions are also from the human geography, where they have asked about the concepts related to population and migration. So the first question that we can look at is a 10-mark question which has clearly asked about the phenomena of sea surface temperature rise. Now we know that in the recent times there has been a lot of focus on the climate change and related patterns parameters, and that is why such kind of questions are being asked in the UPSC examination, both in the prelims as well as mains. So the question is very simple, straightforward. What is sea surface temperature rise and how does it affect the formation of tropical cyclone? Now the question is of 10 marks, so you have to write within 150 words. Now you can follow the standard template of introduction, body, conclusion for answering such question. So in introduction, you can simply explain what is sea surface temperature and what do you understand by the sea surface temperature rise. So sea surface temperature, in simple words, we can explain as the temperature that is measured in the upper part of the sea, that can be ranging from the surface to a depth of somewhere about 20 to 25 meters. And this temperature at a global level can vary somewhere between -3 degrees Celsius to +30 degrees Celsius, depending on whether you are measuring at the polar areas or toward the equatorial areas. So the sea surface temperature increase can be explained this. Plus here also you can add that what is contributing to the sea surface temperature rise, and there obviously you can write about increase in the atmospheric temperature that is driven by increasing concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere related to the industrialization as well as increase in the pollution from the vehicular activities and all. So that is how we can explain in introduction part. The first part of the questions can be answered. Second is how does it affect the formation of tropical cyclones? Now here again, first of all, you can try to describe what do we understand by the term tropical cyclone. So you can write the definition of tropical cyclone, that it is a low pressure system surrounded by high pressure isobars where the wind moves in a rotatory fashion from the outer periphery to the center, clockwise in the southern hemisphere, anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere. Then in tropical cyclone, then you can try to explain that what are the causative factors of the tropical cyclone. That means in what conditions do tropical cyclones develop. Now one of the conditions here is obviously the higher sea surface temperature. Generally for a tropical cyclone to develop, sea surface temperature should be greater than 27 degrees Celsius. And in the first part we have already explained the rise of sea surface temperature, how and why it is happening. Then now you can link that how this rise of sea surface temperature is affecting the formation of tropical cyclone. So what are things that we can add here? So if you look at, first of all, the effect of increase in sea surface temperature on tropical cyclone, first we can understand the number of cyclones that we witness across the world is increasing. That is the first point, because obviously as the global warming causes higher sea surface temperature, and higher sea surface temperature leads to the higher development of higher number of cyclone. So number of cyclones, or another way we can say the frequency of cyclone that we observe in tropical areas, it has been continuously increasing. Second, what is increasing is also the intensity of tropical cyclone. Now the intensity of a cyclone depends on how much amount of water vapor is contained in the atmosphere and how strong the winds are rising. Both of these are positively related to the sea surface temperature rise. Third is, apart from intensity, we see the unusual path that is being taken by the tropical cyclone. Generally, tropical cyclone used to restrict themselves in the latitude of between 5 degree to 30 degree latitude, but now due to the rise of sea surface temperature, these cyclones are entering into the temperate areas as well. That means they are curving and moving toward the polar areas also, we can say. Polar areas, that does not mean that near the poles. Polar areas means from tropic toward the poles. That is how their track is reorienting themselves. So these are the three major changes, and plus obviously the amount of rainfall that happens in tropical cyclone is much more higher. The disaster that is associated with the tropical cyclone now will be much more difficult to manage, and that is leading to loss of life both in the we can say within India as well as across the world, and also loss of the economic we can say properties and all that. So this is how we can simple, because we have tried within 150 words only. These should be your main matter of this particular topic. Now if you look at the second question that is being asked, so second question has been asked about it is about the, again related to climatology, what is the phenomena of cloudburst, explain in 150 words. So again it is 10 mark question. So cloudburst again was in news recently, especially in the context of India, because lot of flood like situations have developed both in the northeastern region as well as the Himalayan region due to cloudburst. So it is a simple forward question. You have to write the definition of cloudburst. So now if you want to properly structure this answer, in introduction you can start with writing the recent examples and the related effects that you have seen in India related to the cloudburst, and there you can give the example of Sikkim, there you can give the example of Himalayas, Uttarakhand, and also you can talk about the most disastrous cloudburst related disaster that India has observed, that is in 2013 in the Kedarnath region, Rudraprayag region of Uttarakhand. Then you can describe what is cloudburst. So basically cloudburst refers to a rainfall that happens in a very huge amount in a very short period of time. More precisely, we can say a rainfall that is up to 100 millimeter per hour or 10 centimeter per hour. So such kind of humongous rainfall is referred as a cloudburst. And then after you describe cloudburst, you have talked about the recent example, then you can write about the causes or the regions behind the cloudburst. So here we can enumerate few important factors. The first is obviously, if we talk about in the context of India, it is due to high amount of water vapor in the atmosphere, and that is associated with the monsoon season in India. Especially if we talk about the North India, it receives monsoon winds from both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, and that causes sudden huge amount or huge supply of water vapor in the atmosphere that rises at a fast rate, creating a huge dense cloud and cloudburst. Other region we can write about is the orographic effect that we see in the Himalayas. Now orographic effect refers to a situation where wind rises very rapidly along the steeper slope of southern slope of this Himalayas, and due to this suddenly what happens, the condensation rate, convection rate is very high, and that causes huge dense cumulonimbus clouds to develop, and this cumulonimbus clouds then suddenly precipitates out in the form of heavy rainfall, creating cloudburst like condition. So two major factors you have to explain here. One is the high amount of water vapor related to the monsoon season, and then orographic effect that we observe in the southern slope of Himalayas due to its steep nature. And then in the last concluding remark you can make that what are the steps that the government of India has taken to manage the cloudburst, and there you can talk about the color coded warning system as classified by the Indian Meteorological Department, where they have designed 4 color coded warning, where you have green alert, yellow alert, orange alert and red alert. Depending on the amount of rainfall in a cloudburst, then appropriate action need to be taken by the people living in the affected areas. So that is something that you can add in the concluding remark. So introduction with a recent example, in body the definition of cloudburst, the regions and the factors behind cloudburst, and concluding with the IMD color coded warning system. This could have been a good structure for this particular question. The third question that we can talk about is again a phenomena which was in news recently because it was observed in the Ladakh, which is a very rare phenomena. So it has been asked about aurora australis and aurora borealis, and the second part of the question is asking about how are these triggered. Now this is a 15-mark questions. That means you have the luxury to write this answer in almost 250 words. So here, first of all, you can start by describing the recent case where we have seen auroras that is limited largely in the higher latitude, but in recent time it has been observed in the lower latitude as far as London, that is situated in subtropical zone, temperate zone, and in the Ladakh, which is at higher altitude but is still at low latitude. So you can basically talk about and define the term aurora australis and aurora borealis. The definition should be simple. Both of these are aurora phenomena. Aurora australis is a phenomena that we observe in the southern hemisphere beyond Antarctic Circle generally, and the aurora borealis is something that we observe in the northern hemisphere beyond Arctic Circle. Beyond Arctic Circle means between 66.5 degrees north to 90 degree north. And these phenomena are collectively called as aurora australis and borealis. Then in the second part, you could have started with explaining what do we understand by the term aurora, and there you can have simply explained that these are the bright flashes of light that you see moving in a curtain-like shape in the sky, which are largely seen in the pink and green spectrum of visible light. So that is how we can explain and define it. Then in the second part of your answer, you can explain by the factors, explain the factors that result into the aurora. So there you could have explained that auroras are phenomena that is caused when the highly energetic particles from the sun are moving toward the earth, and most of these particles are deflected back by the magnetosphere, by what you can say is magnetic field of the earth. However, some of these highly charged particles, highly energetic particles, get trapped in the earth's magnetic field, and since the magnetic field lines are densest near the poles, these particles then move and accumulate around the polar areas both in the north and south. And as these particles start to accumulate around the polar areas, due to the high energy contained in them, they basically come in contact with or interact with the atmospheric gases, which are largely hydrogen, helium, nitrogen, and oxygen at this particular altitude, and this causes these gases to burn. Now the burning of this gas is leading to or resulting in the formation of the light-like phenomena that we see in the sky in the form of aurora. So that could have been the answer to explain that how the phenomena are triggered. Again, in concluding remark, you could have written that why auroras are something that we are witnessing even to a lower latitude in these areas, and that you could have explained by writing about the disturbances in the magnetic field of the sun. Actually, as per NASA, there are two areas on the surface of sun which are having much more higher intensity and higher extent of disturbances, and that is why the amount of energy that is coming out from the sun surface is many times higher, or the intensity of such energy or such radiation is many times higher, and that is why the effect of aurora is now visible even to a lower extent or to a lower latitude. Now this is something that was given in the articles published in both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, I think a few months back. So if you had gone through that article, you could have easily answered these questions. And aurora australis borealis is something that we discuss in class all the time. So this is the part of aerostatic. These are the part of aerostatic. But again, you have to link it to the current affairs, so the examiner will understand that you have the understanding of whatever is going on around you, especially the current events related to the field of space and geography. The next question, that is again from the climatology. So as you can see, a lot of question has been asked this time from the climate and the Earth's atmosphere. Till now, all the 4 questions that we have discussed is basically related to the field of climatology. So question is again very simple, straightforward. The only problem the students can face here is because in general book, the term used for twister is tornado. So if you're not careful, if you have not read properly the news and all that, you might confuse that whether twister is tornado or not, and that is where the difficulty lies. However, again see, recently in a movie has been released in Hollywood. The movie itself is called as Twister. So the twister phenomena is related to the tornado. So from there also you can get a hint about it. So question is again 15 mark. You have to write within 250 words. What is a twister? That is the first part of question. Second, why are the majority of twisters observed in areas around the Gulf of Mexico? Now in the introduction you can simply start by defining twister itself, because question is asked in simple what and why format. So in introduction, you can draw a diagram. Now very importantly, so when you're drawing the diagram for twister, you have to draw a fully developed cumulonimbus cloud that is part of a supercell thunderstorm, and then from the base of this cumulonimbus cloud you have the descent of wind that is rotatory in this we can say rotatory in motion, and this descending wind which look like basically a kind of this kind of structure, a column like structure. The upper part of this column can be around 500 meters, the lower part of this column can be about 50 meters. So that is how we can draw it. This we can write, it is a fully developed cumulonimbus clouds, and this is the descent of wind in a funnel like shape as you can see from here, and that is how we can describe it. Now you can write a proper definition of twister, and you can start by writing such as twister, which is also referred as tornado, can be defined as a very intense and very what we can say severe weather system which is made up of fast rotating column of wind descending from the base of fully developed cumulonimbus cloud that generally forms when a supercell thunderstorm occurs in a given area. The intensity of tornado or twister can be understood from the fact that the pressure difference between the center and periphery is so high, the velocity of the winds in tornado can easily reach between 300 to 500 kilometers per hour. Thus, it is also referred as the most violent weather phenomena in the entire world. Now, this would have been a good answer to explain the first part of the question. The second part is why are the majority of twisters observed in areas around the Gulf of Mexico? Now, remember you are answering geography question. That means whenever you get a chance of drawing a map or diagram, do not lose that. So, again you have the option or possibility that you can simply draw a map of North America, or if you're not aware about the map of North America, at least you can try to represent where is Gulf of Mexico. However, you can draw it like this. This is the Gulf of Mexico region, this is the North America, and then you have the South America here. So this here you can represent. So this is the Gulf of Mexico. Now topographically, if you talk about this side, you have the Rockies mountain, you can show here. This side you have the Appalachian mountain, that also you can show. And in the central part here, between the border of US and Canada, you have one of the largest freshwater body on the earth that is collectively called as Great Lakes, made up of 5 lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. So this is how we can represent the map of North America and show the Gulf of Mexico region. Now you are basically ready to answer the second part of the question, that why the majority of twisters observed in areas around the Gulf of Mexico. Now here you can first of all show that this is the Gulf of Mexico, and it is actually this part of USA which is also called as a tornado alley, which observes or experiences highest number of tornadoes in the world. More than 90% of global tornadoes that occur on an annual basis actually takes place or occurs in the tornado alley. So tornado alley extend from Gulf of Mexico in the east all the way up to the states such as Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and this is the region that is observed, and that is we can say observing the maximum number of twisters. Now you can explain that why it happens. So once you have explained tornado alley, you have drawn the diagram, you have shown everything on the map. Now you can explain that why it happens. So several reasons are there. The most important is the topography of this region. So basically you have the cold winds that is coming from the upper area or the upper latitude that descend from the Rocky Mountains, and then you have the warm winds that is coming from around Gulf of Mexico region. So in this region of tornado alley, you have a meeting of the cold winds and warm winds, and when these winds meet, the warm winds rises very at a very fast rate in the upper atmosphere, creating what we can say a perfect condition for development of thunderstorm. Now in the supercell thunderstorm, you have a complete balance between the updraft, that means the upward movement of the wind, and the downdraft, that is the downward movement of wind. And this is possible because of continuous supply of both cold wind, which is descending in the downward direction, and the warm wind, which is continuously rising in the upper atmosphere. Further, there is a huge supply of water vapor to these warm winds, both from the Gulf of Mexico region as well as from the Great Lakes region in the central part of USA. So that is why you have the highest number of supercell thunderstorm that develop here, and from supercell thunderstorm you have development of tornadoes. And then in concluding remark, you can then write about the recent tornadoes that might have occurred in this part of Tornado Alley and the kind of impact, or we can say implications, that it had on the life and the economy of the people. Now coming to the next question that is asked from the human geography, the population chapter specifically, they have asked about the concept of demographic winter, and the second part of the question is the world moving toward such a situation? Elaborate. Again, it is a 10-mark question, so you have to write a very short, about 150 words. So if we talk about the concept of demographic winter, first of all you can start explaining what is demographic winter. So demographic winter refers to such a situation when the growth rate of population is almost negative. In other way, we can say that the birth rate is below the replacement level of population, and the replacement level of population is considered to be 2.1. So whenever in any country or any region birth rate becomes lesser than 2.1, then such kind of situation can create demographic winter. Many countries in the world, especially the Western countries, in the Western Europe, specifically Germany, Italy, or in Asia, if you talk about, you have Japan, South Korea, or if you go to Eurasia, you have Russia, and also some of the Scandinavian countries. These countries are suffering from the same problem where they are facing continuous population decline. This population decline that causes bulging aged population and lesser number of youth population to support them is referred as demographic winter. Now, is the world moving towards such a situation? Now, since they have asked about world in general, you have to divide your answer in two parts. In first part, you can talk about the developed countries, and in second part, you can talk about the developing countries. So, indeed, in the developed countries, many of the developed countries, they are facing this situation, which you can explain by giving examples from the birth rate and death rate data. On the other hand, then you can talk about the developing countries, where we are seeing demographic opportunity, and that also something that you can call as demographic dividend, that is largely being talked in the context of India, where we can explain that in this case, in many developing countries, especially you talk about the African countries, Asian countries, they are witnessing something that is reverse of demographic winter, where we are having rapid increase in population. And then you can explain this by giving example from India also, and also then you can talk about that in the next 20 to 30 years, it is the 8 countries of the world, including India, Pakistan, Philippines, Egypt, and other countries in Africa, such as Ethiopia is there, Democratic Republic of Congo is there. It is these countries that will contribute to 50% of population increase. So these countries are not witnessing demographic winter, rather they are witnessing something, a reverse of phenomena, while the other developing countries, with example you can explain, are witnessing demographic winter. So again, you cannot say in general that the world is moving towards such a situation, rather the movement is on the basis of the state of development or the extent of development in the world. So that is how we could have explained this question. The next question that has been asked about is again related to migration, urbanization, where they have asked that why do large cities tend to attract more migrants than smaller towns? Discuss in the light of conditions in the developing countries. So here question is straightforward, you do not have to discuss about developed country, give the example of developing country. Now since it is a geography and migration related topic, you could have started your answer by quoting the what we can say is migration theory given by William Riley. William Riley's theory is called as what you can call as gravitational theory of migration. Now, as per the William Riley's gravitational theory, he has said that the extent of migration is directly proportional to the product of population between two countries, two cities, two regions, and inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. So this also explains the fact that is written here, that higher the population between two countries or between two cities or two regions, higher will be the migrant flow. And that is why the larger cities tend to attract more migrants than a smaller one. Now this is the theoretical part you would have explained in introduction. Then in the next part, second part, you can give example of developing countries, especially including India, and say that how the larger cities are attracting more migrants than a smaller town. In India, you can give the example of metropolitan cities such as Delhi, Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, Mumbai. These are the cities where most of the migrants are moving to flocking to rather than the tier 2, tier 3 cities of the India. Now, in the last part, you can explain the regions behind, because you have to discuss in the light of conditions in developed countries. So regions you can give that why it is happening. In regions you can write numerous things, such as you have already, first point we can write about already developed infrastructure to accommodate more and more number of people. However, in recent time we are seeing this infrastructure is crumbling due to the high population or migration pressure. Second is higher opportunities of job and employment that can be skillful as well as semi-skilled to the unskilled sector. Third, we can write about is the development that is happening in these areas itself are driving the demand for labor. So higher the number of houses that is being constructed due to population pressure, higher will be the demand for the workers who are working in construction sector. Also, as more and more people are flocking toward the well-developed large cities, more investment is being made there, and that is what is driving increased employment and job opportunities. So developed infrastructure, availability of job and employment opportunities for all the sectors. Then you have the increasing construction that is driving the demand for the construction worker, and in case of India, construction employs highest number of migration workers as per the data published by the Government of India. Apart from that, you can also refer to some minor facts that in the large cities already there are well established migrant community, and they promote chain migration, because someone who knows someone in village will obviously attract that person in village, and whenever rural to urban migration happens, they generally flock to such cities where they have relative families or friends and all that. So these are the factors that is giving rise to migration to a larger towns or bigger towns. Now, as you have to discuss about this, in the last part you can also conclude by writing about that what are the major problems that we are facing due to such skewed migration, and then you can talk about that the development that is happening is not balanced in nature. It is leading to what we can say is unbalanced regional development, where only few cities of a countries are rapidly progressing, while most of the other tier 2, tier 3 cities are basically facing the brunt of what we can say as lack of development and all that. And then you can write about how the population pressure, increase in migration pressure causes intense pressure on the natural resources, such as depletion of the groundwater resources, depletion of the or we can say deterioration of the air quality as more and more number of vehicles are being driven. Okay, environmental pollution we can talk about, and also the this effect we see is on the forests, lakes and all these kind of natural resources which need to be cut or removed so that large cities can expand and develop. And then a lot of example you can quote itself from India also, but try to add example from nearby countries such as Sri Lanka, Bangladesh you can talk about, African countries you can talk about, and so and so. So this should have been the correct way of approaching to this particular question. The last question in geography that has been asked is related to the resources, and they have focused upon the groundwater resources. Now the question is very simple, that the groundwater potential of the Gangetic Valley is on a serious decline. Now this is a statement, and the second part is how may it affect the food security of India. So in the first part, simply as it is a geography question, you could have drawn a beautiful map of India, and then on this map you could have shown that which part of India is where Gangetic Valley is situated. So you could have shown here the Ganga river is coming out from here. So this entire region, right, extending from the Uttar Pradesh, then passing through Bihar, part of Jharkhand, and then going all the way up to West Bengal is called as Gangetic Valley, which is further divided into Upper Gangetic Valley, Mid Gangetic Valley and the Lower Gangetic Valley. So once you have drawn and shown on the map of India the Gangetic Valley, then you could have proceeded to explain about the groundwater potential. So you could have explained that groundwater potential refers to the availability of groundwater in the aquifers around the Gangetic Valley. And then you could have talked about the recent report published by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, where it has said that in the last 20 years, the groundwater extraction has increased by almost 8 to 9%. And this is something which is creating a problem of a serious decline in the Gangetic Valley. Then in the second part, you could have written about what are the factors, as it is a 15-mark question, you have luxury of writing few more points. So you could have written what are the factors that is leading to this decline of the groundwater potential. Now you do not have to explain those factors, but simply you can list it out. So first can be increase in the groundwater extraction, mainly for the irrigation purposes. Second, due to increase in population pressure, as this is the region which is having one of the highest population density in India, due to increase in population pressure, there is a high demand of the water for drinking purposes, for household purposes. And then third, you could have written about the demand in the industrial sector also, because a lot of water intensive industries are situated here, such as leather industry, paper and pulp industry, and they also use a huge amount of water, groundwater here. Then after listing out the factors responsible for the rise, you could have tackled that how the food security of India could be impacted by it. And here you could have talked about the impact of groundwater decline or groundwater potential decline on the food security. There you could have written, first of all, there is decline in the crop yield that we can witness, because we know that in this area more than 60% of the farmland, agricultural land, are dependent on what we can call as the irrigation, that is canal irrigation, and also the irrigation that is done by the boring or submersible pump, so pump irrigation we can say. So obviously, as higher amount of agricultural land is dependent upon the irrigation based on groundwater, it can decline or cause decline of crop yield if the water level declines. Second, we can talk about is change in cropping pattern, because today this entire region, the Gangetic Valley, is known for producing huge amount of cereal crops, water intensive crops such as rice, wheat and sugarcane. So if water table declines, there will be change in the cropping pattern where people can shift to dry land crop, and that can create another problem, because the food security, if we talk about of India, is largely dependent upon the supply of rice and wheat. So as the cropping pattern changes, people will stop, or will say there will be decline in the production of rice and wheat. Then the procurement by the government, especially for the PDS system that I talk about, public distribution system, which largely supplies rice and wheat, will be impacted, and that will obviously cause food scarcity and the problems of food security to the poor section, or we can say marginalized section of the society. So try to link to the public distribution system the problems in procurement of the food grains as well. Fourth, we can try to add, because in this part of India, especially since agriculture is a major economic activity, you have a large number of farmers that reside here. So if the water for irrigation declines, groundwater potential declines, obviously farmers will face the wrath of it in more intense manner. They will not have enough resources to tackle with such problems. That can cause crisis among the farmers, where their overall household income will decrease. So obviously, if their household income is decreasing, they will not be able to ensure food security for the family members. So the effect will be observed on the farmers as well. And the fifth and last point we could have written about the water itself is a very vital element for the survival and sustenance of people. So if that groundwater potential declines, it will not only impact the food, but also the water scarcity, especially the drinking water scarcity, something that we see in the southern part of India, especially in the peninsular India or in central part of India. There, that is something that we can expect to occur in the future in northern part or Gangetic Valley of India as well. So this could have been a better way to address all the demands of the question and write all this point. And then in concluding remarks, you could have written about the schemes or the steps that has been taken by India or the government of India to ensure that groundwater potential does not decline, or we can improve the groundwater potential. So here you can have written about the schemes, especially the river interlinking projects that we are talking about, or the Namami Gange scheme that that government has initiated few years back. So those could have been written. So that is how we could have addressed the answers of the geography question this year. Total 7 questions have been asked, mainly from climatology, from the population and from the resource chapters. That is all for this particular review. I hope you understood and have now understanding of writing a well structured answer for geography questions. Thank you very much.